Alright guys, I'd like to welcome you guys to this week's video. As I said last week, I'm going to be talking about the tackle you're going to need for breakwater fishing and riprap and jetties and things like that. Before I get into details, I want to talk a little bit about the PCS show that's coming up this weekend. It starts Thursday, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Could be at the Orange County Convention Center, or Orange County Fairgrounds. I'm sorry, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be the big show this year. As you know, Fred Hall's kind of fallen by the wayside, so this is the show. They got a lot of great seminars. I'll be there Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday talking about calico bass fishing. You can, I'm sure you've seen it on Facebook. I've shared stuff on my Facebook page, Instagram. So if you see me at the show, just stop by and say hello. Anyway, regarding tackle, so basically all the tackle we're using when we're fishing the breakwall and jetties and riprap is the same tackle we used in the bay and fishing deeper structure for calico bass and sand bass. So you don't actually need to buy any new tackle for this, which is good. So you're already pretty much starting to fill out your inshore arsenal here. Starting out, first off, most popular for me, it's the crankbait setup. Again, I fish at 98XH Rain Shadow Revelation, 200 pen fathom low profile, 30-pound braid, 40-pound fluorocarbon. The crankbaits I fish inside the bay, I also fish at the wall and along riprap, so we're ready to go with those. And I'm going to kind of go quick over the tackle because we've already talked about this in previous episodes. If you're new to the series, I'd go back and watch some of the earlier episodes to get caught up. Second setup is something we're recycling from spotted bay bass, and that's what was our fluke rod. We've taken a 10-pound fluorocarbon line off here and we filled it up with 15-pound fluorocarbon line now. No spectra. Same thing, a 7-foot medium action graphite rod, 200 size reel, 15-pound fluorocarbon line. We're going to be using this to fish small hard baits like the Lucky Craft Pointer 100 deep diver or the extra deep, but I'll talk about that in a minute. This is your heavier or your spectra version of your bay rod that you're using for fishing spinner baits, swim baits, things like that. This is going to be your real workhorse when fishing swim baits or any kind of soft plastics at the in this situation. Finally, we have our big rod here that I was slug on because I just got back from last I fished for sand bass. But this same thing is going to be our heavy wall rod, mostly fishing at night, and that is a heavy action 7'10" graphite rod. This is Rain Shadow Revelation. Any brand will work. 200 size reel, or actually a 300 size reel, a 300 pen fathom low profile, 50-pound braid, 40-pound fluorocarbon leader. So those are the, very similar to the setups you had. They're basically the exact same setups you had earlier. So you got your rods taken care of, don't even worry about that. It's more of an idea about baits and techniques that you're considering now. So a couple misconceptions I want to clear up about breakwall fishing. While calicos and sand bass at the breakwall do eat crabs and crustaceans, if all they ate was crabs and crustaceans, all the bass at the breakwall would starve to death within a few months. There's just not enough of them there to feed them. So while they may have a crab in their mouth or a little lobster spine or something like that sticking out, that doesn't mean you need to use a creature bait or something that impersonates a crab to get a bite. All that's really going to happen when you do this is you're going to slow down your presentation a lot and not cover nearly as much water. And I say that from experience. I've spent, 25 years fishing the wall off and on. And when Matt and I first got our first boat, we fished creature baits, we fished these worm-looking things, we fished ridiculous crankbaits that weren't designed for any of this stuff, and we caught fish on it, but I found that it's just a lot of unnecessary nonsense, like I talk about with bay bass fishing. I keep it simple. I throw a crankbait, I throw a small hard bait, I throw a swim bait, and I throw a heavier swim bait, and that's basically all you need to do. So the other misconception is that you need to be right up on the rocks to get bites on fish, or that you need to fish big baits to get big bites. The biggest calico bass I've caught at the breakwall I happened to catch during a tournament. In the middle of the day, with Mark Higashi from Performance Tackle, we're fishing a Radar Ray tournament. We ran down to fish the wall because it was biting. Back in the mono days, I'm fishing 25-pound mono, and I had a lot of loose line on my reel, so I kind of pitching the bait to the wall. I did like a 5-inch big hammer on a shad head or something. I wanted to clear that line, so I just cast directly off the back of the boat as far as I could cast, stripped out the bad line, and burned the bait back to the boat, just get absolutely hammered and get this almost 10 pound, 9.7 something pound calico. Not related into the wall at all, really. Obviously there was probably some bait fish out there it was feeding on, but that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the fact you don't need to be right up in it to get fish to bite. So some of these presentations, be it the break wall or riprap or things like that, all rely on seeing what the bait fish are doing, where they're at. You know, if there's a bunch of birds diving, cormorants and everything else, and they're 30 feet off the wall, the bass are going to come off that wall and feed on the same stuff. So I've seen tournaments before where guys are fishing the wall and they're pointing at the wall and they're casting like this, and behind them, bass are boiling, but they're not looking there because they're just fishing the wall. We pulled up just past them and waylaid the thing. You know, catch 50, 60 fish when other guys are catching nothing or 1 or 2. So just something to keep in mind. So let's start out with the crankbaits. The dredgers, like I mentioned before, 17.5, 20.5, same ones you had for spotted bay bass. If you're fishing the actual break wall or one of the jetties that's outside of a harbor mouth, I would go with the 17.5. You don't need to dive that deep. You want to get occasional bottom contact, but that's all you want to do. You don't want it ticking on the bottom the whole time. You're just going to hang it up. If you're fishing the riprap inside of a harbor, I go with the 20.5 if it's deep water, because you want that bait to run a little bit deeper. If you're in, if the riprap ends in like 10 or 15 feet of water, you can go with the 17.5. If you're, 10 feet off the wall and you're sitting in 20 feet of water, I'd go with the 20.5 because it's going to get you some extra depth. In that same scenario, both at the wall and along riprap, I love throwing a DD100. That's what I call it. It's a Lucky Craft Pointer 100. This thing's actually broken, missing a lot of hooks from catching too many bass. But this bait fish parallel to the wall, kind of like a crankbait, except it's burn it, pause. So let me show you here. So I cast it out. You don't really have to burn this bait down because it runs pretty shallow. So I'll just 5 or 6 fast turns and then pause. For that long, and then pause. And a lot of those bites, almost all of them will come on that pause, or right when you re-engage the reel. The bait kind of floats backwards up, and it gets a lot of bites. A bait that works well too, but it's expensive, and I don't do it enough to get them. I got a bunch of the DD100. This is the extra deep. This is a real killer in Long Beach Harbor along riprap. It runs down as deep as a crankbait or a little bit deeper, but it's a hard bait to wind all day. It really takes some effort. But if those fish are suspended on the edge of that riprap, a bait like that will absolutely get bit. All right, sorry about that. I had a little issue with my camera. So the next thing I was getting to was the rod you're getting most of the use out of here, and this is your swim bait rod. Now, so why fish a swim bait instead of a creature bait? This is a 5-inch Viejos, by the way. This is on a 1-ounce head, but I would fish this on a 1/2 ounce head. I find that in most conditions, a 1/2 ounce head, something preferably with the eye on the top. You don't need a weed guard, but you want the eye at the top. A lot of people snag up at the wall, but a lot of the snags you get is mussels, not rocks, if you fish properly. What happens, the mussels are open trying to catch stuff, and your line goes in there and touches it, and they close on your line. So you're pitching around piling some mussels on them, that's what happens. But the lighter heads, 1/2 ounce heads, tend to get caught less in the rocks. So the swim bait, getting back to what I was saying here, this is a bait that you can fish quickly. And by quickly, in the case of the break wall, so if you're fishing a creature bait or a swim bait or whatever, you're gonna cast it hopefully straight at the wall to where it lands right at the edge of where the rocks meet the water. I keep my rod up like this, and I'll wind, and I'll pause, I'll let it sink down to the rocks. I'll wind, I'll pause, let it sink back down to the rocks. At a certain point, you're going to have to start kicking in free spool because the wall drops off. Logging your cast, you're going to have to get that bait down to the bottom. And then by the time I get it about to a, almost a 45-degree angle, I'll just wind it back and make another cast. And that works during the night, during the day, whatever. People talk about using scent. People talk about doing a lot of other things like that. I'll tweak around with that. I'll speed it up. I'll slow it down. Sometimes I just do a faster wind, but in that case, I'd probably fish a crankbait instead of a swim bait. A lot of these guys fish these big giant swim baits and stuff like that, and that's great. I'm happy they're catching fish on them, but the more rubber that those fish have to get in the mouth, the lower percentage hookup you're going to have. And I have not yet seen that the fish care about size at all at the wall. Even if you go to a bigger bait and there's a bunch of dinks around, you're still going to catch dinks on that big bait. So, one of the other things that, goes with fishing the wall is, especially at night, is using a scent. And a lot of guys like to use a scent. I found, again here, Gulp makes some great products. They make this curly tail grub. This is a 5-inch. This is a nuclear chicken. I think they make a 6-inch too. This at night on a lead head is pretty deadly. It's going to fish as good as any creature bait or swim bait will. And it gets, it draws strikes. That scent really does. If you're fishing during the day, that's not a great bait. It's just they don't really seem to like it. During the day, I'd prefer a Gulp on a jerk shad on a sled head. This is a 6-inch. They don't make 7-inch anymore, so 6-inch on a sled head. Or you can fish like the 7-inch MC split tail slug on a sled head. And you're basically fishing the same way. Cast it up to the edge of the rocks, take a few winds, let it sink in gear, take a few winds, let it sink in gear. Once it sinks in gear and just starts swimming back to you, kick it free spool, let it sink down further. All those things work. You can also bomb a cast straight off the bow of the boat, sink it to the bottom, and slow roll it back along the bottom back to you. And you get more sand bass doing that than calicos. Calicos usually tend to be up on the wall a little bit more. But this rod here with this 30-pound and this swim bait is going to get you through 90% of your applications during the day if you want to fish soft plastics. At night, you can go to this heavier rod. Fish a little less line shy. You might hook a real big one. Chances of hooking a bigger one are better at night, it seems like. But we've got plenty of big ones during the day too. But if you're going to slow your presentation down, and have that bait spend time down in the around the rocks and stuff, that heavier setup is good to get that fish out of there. If you're fishing riprap inside of the harbor, you're never going to pick up that real heavy rod. Those fish, you don't need it, and the fish will be more. The water's a lot clearer in there, and they are more resistant to bite. So I would say with this thing, but again, in that inner harbor riprap, I would never throw a swim bait. I would throw crankbait, DD100, Gulp jerk shad. That's the type of baits you would fish in that situation. In Long Beach Harbor and San Diego Harbor both, there's some really deep docks in there. They go down 40, 50 feet. You don't need to fish on the bottom. These docks usually have pilings. The fish will be suspended in there. I'll throw a crankbait through there. You could pitch something on the piling. You could pitch a swim bait or a jerk shad or something on the piling. But yeah, they'll usually bite. Just because it's 50 or 60 feet deep doesn't mean they're on the bottom. So you don't really need to drag the bait on the bottom of the fish in there. Yeah, I guess that pretty much covers the different presentations. Again, I said it's simple. Crankbait, small hard bait, swim bait, jerk shad, Gulp grub, and that's basically going to cover all your bases. And like I've said in all these videos, everybody has their favorites. You want to fish a hookup bait, you want to fish an A-rig, you want to fish some fancy creature bait or some fake lobster or any of those things, you can feel free to. I go for the easy route. And for me, it's more about finding areas that are body looking and fishing a bait I have confidence in, and it seems to work out pretty well. So I hope you got something out of this, and I hope I see you guys at the show this weekend.